Okay. All right, so I am going to be recording the session for those that are not able to join us today. They can be able to take a look down the road here. So again, I do have Rosa Booker joining us today from the Delaware River and Bay Authority. So thank you very much, Rosa, for joining us. Some of you may have tried to hop on. She was going to be doing this session back in the end of January for our Liberal Arts Career Week, and campus closed due to weather, so we had to cancel it. So we're glad to have Rosa back to do this session today. So a little bit about Rosa. She has over 20 years of human resources, talent acquisition, and talent management experience in various human resources disciplines in a variety of sectors: healthcare, not-for-profit, for-profit, and retail, just to name a few. She is currently an HR specialist recruiting for the Delaware River and Bay Authority. In addition to having experience as a field staffing leader and regional human resources business partner for an international food services corporation, she has also functioned as a human resources manager and contract recruiter. She has technical and process expertise and understands the importance of recruiting and attracting high caliber talent, as well as functioning as a strategic business partner for her organization. Rosa has received numerous awards and recognition for her efforts and results as a human resources professional. Rosa attended Elizabethtown College in Elizabethtown, PA, where she majored in communications and is currently enrolled at Wilmington University, majoring in organizational management. She is a SHRM CP and currently working toward her SPHR certification. She works in Newcastle, Delaware, and resides in Philadelphia. So I think you said about a 45-minute commute, maybe, Rosa, or an hour. Oh, you're muted, so go ahead and sorry. Yeah, so she has a little bit of a commute each day, but yeah, let's see.
Yeah, on a good day. On a good day, 45 minutes. Yes.
Yeah. So perfect, Rosa. So thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you to all of our participants that are on here. You can also, as Rosa is going along, if you think of anything, a question that you want, because this is a webinar format, you're welcome to put that in either the chat or the Q&A, and I will get those and moderate as needed. So take it away, Rosa. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic, Stacy. Thank you so much. And for you students out there, thank you for your time today and attention to what I feel is a really important matter as you seek out and begin your career path and your career search. I'm sure a lot of the materials that I'm reviewing today you've heard before. What I say to that is you can't hear it enough. It really, as you're going now to interview to embark on either an internship, a full-time opportunity, a co-op, whatever it may be, you do want to put your best foot forward. So without further ado, I'll move forward. So this is Interviewing 101 with me. So the types of interviews that we use here at the DRVA are phone interviews, panel interviews, and then depending upon the situation, we might have a final interview. So the phone interview, so of course you're an applicant, you submit your application, and then the hiring manager makes a decision depending upon the pool of candidates. If we've only have one or two candidates, a phone interview may not be warranted, but for some positions we have up to 10 applicants that would be qualified. And so we will conduct a phone interview to narrow the field to those that we want to move to a panel interview. So as you move forward, just to kind of understand what each of these types of interviews are, the phone interview is normally the first interview. It's a brief interview. It lasts normally 15 to 30 minutes, and the hiring manager or his or her appointee is simply feeling out the candidate to get an idea of their general experience, their disposition, and if, they have the experience and disposition, if they would be a fit, not only for the DRBA, but any organization. But again, here, I'm talking about the DRBA. Next, if we decide from that phone interview that we want to move you forward, then what I will do is arrange a panel interview. A panel interview is an interview where you have a minimum of 2 interviewers. Normally, it's 3 up to 5 people on the panel that you will go before to interview. And either you'll have one person asking the questions, or the panel may choose to do round robin so that you can get exposure to all of the panelists on the panel. The panel interview can be conducted in person or virtually. It is where the organization, as I said, you gather key, and the people that's on the panel are key players. So for example, if our maintenance department is going to conduct a panel interview for fleets, they're going to include the fleet supervisor. They're going to probably include the roadway supervisor. They're probably also going to include a customer within the organization that they work very closely with. So say, for example, here at the DRBA, our fleets department work on all of the vehicles that's a part of the DRBA. So our law enforcement unit is a big customer of our maintenance fleet department. And so someone from law enforcement may be a part of the panel in that particular case. And then we have the final interview. When you come before the panel, there are structured interviews, structured interview questions. Normally, there's around 10 interview questions. And I always tell people, just relax. It's about talking about what you know. And if you don't know, then you don't know. But really expressing why you're the best person for the opportunity. Oh, sorry about that. And then, like I said, the final interview. Once you get past the panel interview, you may be selected as a finalist. Sometimes the panel can make the final decision. But if it's a tie between 2 or 3 candidates, there will be a final interview where you go before the director of the department. You would meet one-on-one with that director, and then that director will make the final decision of whether or not you will be given an offer. So here at DRBA, the way that we function is if you are given the offer, you are called by our Chief Human Resources Officer, who will extend you the offer. And if you are not selected, then I call each and every person that has a virtual in-person or real in-person interview to let them know, because I believe you have to give them that courtesy of letting them know, especially if they've gone through the interview process. To talk a little bit about the virtual interview, as everybody here knows, COVID changed the way that we operate as the world, as a society. So in today's era of virtual meeting, this has become a staple, the virtual interviewing. And the thing about the virtual interview is that it is convenient. You as a job seeker, you don't have to worry about getting up, getting fully dressed. I mean, you could be dressed at the top, shorts at the bottom, or, whatever it is that you may want to do at the bottom. So it takes away that. It takes away having to navigate through traffic and, being worried about whether or not you're going to get there on time if there's an accident. So it's convenient. It's efficient, even for your panel, they're doing it right from their desk, as well as you're doing it right from your desk. So that's efficiency. And you still get that face-to-face exposure. And so ultimately, though, as you're going through that virtual interview, you must treat it as an in-person interview. You as a job seeker have got it, both the panel as well as the job seeker have to approach this virtual interview as if you were walking through that door and sitting down in front of this panel, and this panel is sitting in front of you to conduct this interview in the most professional manner possible. So that means you have to get prepared for your interview. And again, that's on both sides. You know, I prepared the panel for your interview, and then you have to do the homework. And so I always say, and again, I'm sure some of this you've heard before, but I can't say enough. Please make sure you know something about the company. I have to tell you, as a recruiter that sits in on numerous interviews, when the question is asked, tell me what you know about the Delaware River and Bay Authority, and the candidate says, oh, well, I really don't know a lot. It's like, for me, it's like nails on a chalkboard. That, I mean, that's how serious I take it. And I think that, you know, I give that feedback to the panel at the end of the interview, like, hey, this person didn't even take the time to find out who we are. So are they really interested in us? Are they really interested in what we do? Or are they just looking for a job versus a career? So when you're researching the company in your interviewers, please utilize LinkedIn. You know, you want to know who that company is. You know, there may be some hot button information that you extract from that research that you can really hone in on and communicate to this panel or interviewer why you're the best person for the job. So take the time to do that. I mean, it may be something that you discover about this company that makes you that much more interested and excited about the organization. And then also utilize LinkedIn. You know, get your interviewer's name, even if you're working with a recruiter. You know, that's one. Actually, let me tell you this. This is one of my litmus tests. When I'm speaking with a candidate, I will always tell them, whether they ask or not, who they are interviewing with. And let me tell you what the key is. If I see them writing down the name, or they say to me, can you repeat that spelling, or can you spell that for me? Then I know that that candidate is very serious about going and looking and finding more information about that interviewer. And that is important. And so I'm giving you a little bit behind the scenes kind of peek about what recruiters do. I can't speak for all recruiters. I just know that's one of the things that I do. So you want to find out who they are. You know, go to LinkedIn, or if they're not on LinkedIn, Google them. You know, most people have an electronic footprint these days, and you can find some information about them. But what's really exciting is if you do find that information about them, again, you may find that you guys have a lot in common. You know, there may be organizations of kind that you belong to. You know, there may be interests that you know, you have in common with one or more of your interviewers, and that's where you can make that personal connection. So not only, and then also what's really important, guys, is that people like to know that you've taken the time to learn about them. You know, I can say to Stacy, oh, hey, Stacy, I see that you're a graduate of Penn State University and that, you know, you've worked with career services before. I love people who work in career services. I'm now making a personal connection to her and what's important to her. And it is those kind of connections that go a long way for you in the interview process. So, you know, gather the information on the department or division that you will be interviewing with. Understand, you know, how they evolve, you know, if there's information about the direction that you're moving in. And if there's not information about the direction that you're moving in, that's always a great question to ask, right? Because at the end of the interview process, you're always going to get that questions. What question do you have for us? You know, and so that's a question to ask. Hey, you know, I found out this information about your organization and department, but, you know, where do you, because we as the interviewees are always asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, oh my God, that's a question that drives me crazy. I don't ask that question, but that's a question to ask of the company, because you're looking at a company that perhaps you're thinking to build your career with. So where do you see the department in 5 years? You know, what is the vision of the department? Tell me a little bit about the culture. Those are questions that you want to ask. So I'm probably jumping the gun a little bit there, but the next thing that you want to do is review and understand the job description and job posting. So I had a boss one time. I used to work a little bit in sales. I was working for a staffing organization. And the one thing that she taught me was this: find out what they want and give it to them. Well, that job posting and or that job description is telling you what they want. And so the key is for you to comb through that job posting or that job description, see what they're asking for, and during that interview process, give them the content in your own words related to your own experience of what is in that job posting. You can use this posting to develop questions that you may want to ask, or questions that you may want to ask the interviewers. And again, ask about the company. As I said, that job description or job posting tells you exactly what that employer is looking for. People get interview and they go out on these tangents about things that's not really relevant to the job. This way, if you're speaking to the content in that job posting or that job description, you are talking to the panel about what they want to hear as it relates to your abilities, skills, and knowledge for that particular position. Recruit a friend to practice answering questions. You can always go online and, Google top 10 interview questions. Even if those questions aren't asked, at least it'll give you a level of comfort when you begin to, when the panelists begin to ask you questions or your interviewer begin to ask you questions. You may even want to get more specific. Let's just say, for example, you're going to interview for, let's just say, a mechanical engineer. Well, there are very specific interview questions that's going to be asked of a mechanical engineer. So you may not only want to Google routine interview questions, but you may also want to Google questions specifically for whatever it is that you're interviewing for. If it's a digital marketing coordinator, Google interview questions for digital marketing coordinators. If it's a recruiter, interview questions asked for recruiting. So you can get specific so that you can really, really do your homework and get comfortable about the more technical questions that may be asked for whatever position you're interviewing for. Bring extra copies of your resume always, not just one. You may not need to use them, but make sure that you have them on hand. And also bring a notebook and a pen. I always say, number one, you can write down your questions before you get to the interview or before, the panel interview. Number two, during that interview, please feel comfortable with taking notes. For me, it's one of the things that I love. I love to see candidates taking notes during the interview. Why? Because again, it tells me that they are engaged, that they are interested, that they are, wanting to really hone in on what it is that we're asking them. You may need to come back to a question to get something clarified. This way you don't lose track of your thoughts. And then you're also gathering information that may help you to develop additional questions at the end of your interview. So please do not hesitate to take notes and to have a pen. Prepare your interview outfit. We already touched on that a little bit. Again, in a virtual environment, just make sure it's professional, from the torso up. Whatever happens from the torso down is up to you, but you do want to have that professional presentation. And then, of course, if you are actually interviewing in person, because a lot of organizations have also gone back to that, you want to look your absolute professional best, no matter how informal or casual the ultimate position may be. For that interview, you want to put your best foot forward. I mean shoes, not sneakers. I mean pants, not khakis. A tie. A nice dress, not a mini skirt, but a nice dress. So just look professional. And if you're not sure, what a professional look is, please make sure you get together with your career counselor just to find out. I know when I was coming up in the ranks, and this is something that you can never ever go wrong with, it's just like I said, a really, anything navy blue or black will always work, because that's always a professional presentation. But also, in these days you can add a splash of color, but just make sure you look good. And then what's really important is get a good night's rest, because most of the time you're going to be a little nervous anyway. But I always say here, please, and I tell candidates this every single interview I go into, just relax. It's a conversation. It's a two-way street. Yeah, the interviewers are going to ask you questions. Yeah, the panelists are looking at you, but you're just going to talk about what you know or what you don't know, and if you don't know it, then, don't guess unless they ask you to. And so for your actual interview, for an in-person interview, please make sure you arrive 10 to 15 minutes early. This way, you can get your nerves calm, get a cup of water, go to, the restroom or whatever it is that you need to do to settle yourself. And then also with your panel, if with your virtual interview, you may want to just, pop in about 5 minutes early, just, that you're there, that your technology is working, you can check all those kind of things. And again, make a great first impression. No matter what has happened, a couple of minutes before, the day before, on your way to the interview, shake it off. It is time to sell yourself. And I think people forget that all of the time. I was speaking with someone yesterday, last week. It was a headhunter actually that called me. And, it just reminded me, because he was asking me questions about my background and my experience. And it just reminded me, like, oh, hey, you know what? This is an opportunity for me. This is where I can boast my braggables. This is where you want to talk about your accomplishments. This is where you want to talk about your contributions. This is where you want to talk about your ideation, your innovation, your vision, what you're looking to accomplish for your life, what you can contribute to this organization. And so these are things that you should also think through previous to going into that interview as well. And especially understanding the company, the type of business that they're in, and what you can bring to that company to improve who they are, what they are, and then specifically the department that you're interviewing for. Tie your answers to the roles and responsibilities of the position. We already talked about that. It is already in the job posting. It is already in the job description. They are telling you what they want. And so make sure you tie your answers to what it is that they want. Use the STAR method. I'm sure everyone here has heard of the STAR method. So when you want to respond with giving them an example of a situation, what the task was for that situation, what action you took to address that task in that situation, and then what was the result of everything that you've done. And then sometimes you don't always want to, talk about all the great things that you've done, right? That's easy. It's also important to talk about things that where you really had a challenge, where the result was, hey, you know what? I really needed to go to my supervisor and bounce off of my supervisor some ideas that I had because I couldn't satisfy that customer with the solution that I came up with. And that is fantastic, because what that's also telling this panel or this interviewer is, hey, this person has the wherewithal to know that if I don't have the answers, if I can't satisfy whomever it is I'm trying to satisfy, he or she has the wherewithal to know, hey, let me go to my supervisor, let me collaborate and come up with a potential solution for this person, customer, or situation, whatever it may be. And so it's okay, to talk about, when you had to perhaps seek help to resolve something. Be prepared with examples of your work relevant to the opportunity. Did you do, I don't know, a digital marketing project or some type of recruitment project or some type of engineering project, whatever it is, again, whatever area of work that you are looking to secure, whatever type of relevant work, project work, special task that you've done relevant to that, it's time for you to talk about that. And as I said to you, remember that interviews are a two-way street. It's not just about the panel nor the interviewer asking you all the questions. Hey, you also have a right to ask questions to make sure that this is going to be right for you. So, questions to anticipate. Again, what do you know about our organization? How can you be an asset to our organization? I talked about both of those things. Tell me or us a little bit about yourself. Guys, when they ask you this question, you don't want to start talking about your sisters, your brothers, your dog, your cat, and your family. What you want to talk about is, I am an engineering major at Penn State University, looking to graduate May of 2023. I had an internship at X, Y, and Z. I got into engineering because of whatever the reasons are. You want to talk, when you tell me a little bit about yourself, you want to talk about what's relevant to helping that, to the position that you're interviewing for, the value it's going to bring to the organization. And then on the back end, you might want to say a little bit about yourself. In addition to those things, I love basketball, I love to work out or spend a lot of time reading. But those kind of pieces are secondary. Tell me a little bit about yourself is, again, you want to highlight, this is your highlight reel. Think about it that way. Your highlight reel to highlight those things relevant to the position you're interviewing for. And then what are your career goals? If you know that, you know it. And if you're, right now, say, hey, that's what it is. Right now, I've explored your company and your opportunity. And I think it's, an opportunity that can help me better define the direction that I want to move in. I've seen myself in a human resources capacity as an example, but understanding that human resources have many arms. I want to try recruiting to see if that's something that I like, but I'd like to be exposed to human resources overall because, I'll get exposure to the different components and I may be interested in some other things. But that's one scenario. But if you're sure about what it is that you want to do, I want to become a project manager in a mechanical engineering capacity with a growing company where I can grow a career. Hey, that's your answer. But please be prepared with an answer. The last thing that you want to say is, I don't know. So, just don't say that. And you may not know. And if you do want to frame it up that way, you better window dress that answer so that that panel or interviewer can understand that you are finding your way. Questions to ask at the close of the interview. As I said, during this interview, you may be taking notes about some of the things that the panel, are saying, because the panel is going to share some insight with you about themselves, about the organization. The department manager will probably, if you're interviewing with a singular person, they're probably going to share some things around expectations, things like this. And so you want to, pay attention, listen for those and jot down any questions that come up in your mind on a piece of paper so that when you get to the end, you can begin to ask those questions. When we started, you talked about the department being a relatively new department. Where do you see the department in 5 years? Where do you see the company in 5 years? Is this a position that has opportunity for growth? Do you have a mentoring program in your organization? Those kind of things. You don't want to talk about money here. You just want to ask some general questions. If no one has mentioned next steps, make sure you ask after you finished all your questions. Next steps should be your last question. Can you tell me a little bit about next steps? You also want to, it's fine for you to ask, how soon are they looking to fill the position? What is the ideal candidate for the opportunity that you're interviewing for? And then if it's in person, ask for their business cards. If it's virtual, and this is so important, guys, and nobody does it. I know for me, and I can't speak for others, when I send out the virtual invitation, the virtual meeting invitation, I have everybody the panelist, as well as the candidate on that email string. That is your opportunity to get the email addresses of your panelists right there. So a lot of people don't pay attention to that. So I'm giving you this little nugget. So if they don't have the business cards, when you get that panel interview virtual meeting email, you can grab their emails off of that. So there's other types of interviews as well. Generally, we talked about interviewing generically. There are some companies that prefer to have behavioral interviews, the most commonly used, where the questions are experientially based, where they're going to say, tell me about a time. How did you? Where you're going to need to respond in the STAR format: situation, task, action, result. Strategic is used to determine the use of logic, risk assessment, and the ability to look at the bigger picture and how your decisions can favorably or unfavorably impact the organization. So just like, I talked about earlier, there was a situation where, you didn't really know how to resolve the issue. And so what you did was you went and collaborated with someone to kind of figure it out. The motivational interview is used to tie goals into a path of success for the interviewee or candidate. And you'll recognize this type of interview, the motivational interview, because this type of interview is always going to be geared around the what's next for you in your career, in this organization, how the organization functions. And so you'll find this with a lot of tech organizations, and really innovative organizations do a lot of motivational interviewing. And then finally, emotional intelligence, where it's measuring self-awareness, empathy, and emotions. And so you'll find that you may have this type of interview when you're working with people, in a sensitive situation, perhaps in healthcare, perhaps in mental health, social work, those type of organizations. You might find the use of the emotional intelligence type of interview in those situations. And so after the interview, make sure you send a thank you email or note. Especially if it's possible for you to drop it off. In today's, I don't want to weigh in that too heavily. That's a nice to do, but that thank you note via email is key. Even if you're working with a recruiter and, you haven't, and that's what I'm trying to say, a lot of times I'll get an email from the candidate that's, saying thank you, and I will forward that on to the panel. But I'm saying to you now, you can send that thank you note directly to the panel. What I would say is directly to the recruiter, what I would say is, you can send the thank you note email directly to the panel or directly to the singular interviewer. What I would say in both cases is CC, if you're working with a recruiter, CC the recruiter so that the recruiter can know. Because guys, sometimes the recruiter is the cheerleader for you. If there's a tie between candidate number one, we've got 3 candidates and there's 2 candidates that this panel really, really like, that recruiter can weigh in and help to break that tie. And so make sure you include your recruiter in all that you do if you're working with a recruiter. Make your notes specific to the individual, and please, this is your opportunity. And again, if you hadn't expressed it during the interview, to reiterate why you are the best person for the opportunity. If you don't hear back within the given timeline, like I'll say, you can look to hear from me midweek next week. If you don't hear from midweek next week, give them a couple more days. So if I say midweek next week and I haven't heard from you by Wednesday, then you want to put that follow-up call in on either Friday or Monday. And that it doesn't hurt to do that. It's great to do it. Please, if you're interested in a position, don't feel shy about following up. But the one thing that I will say is, if you follow up with the recruiter or hiring manager or panelist, please make sure it's after that deadline that they gave you and not before, because that could be a little aggravating. And so yeah, do the follow-up. And then even if you don't get the job, but made a connection with one of the interviewers, the panelists, or whoever, keep in touch with them. You never know when something else can happen within that organization. Or, if you've really connected with one of the panelists, or, if you've really connected with that particular hiring manager that you interviewed with, even if you didn't get the job, you may want to ask them, hey, I really enjoyed working with you. I really, based on your LinkedIn profile, I would love it if you could possibly serve as a mentor, an informal mentor for me. That's a form of networking, and you never know how that might help you to build your future. So guys, that's the end of my presentation. I thank you so much for your time today. Stacy will have the presentation. If you want to access some of these resources that I accessed in order to present this information to you today. Thank you, God bless, and I just wish you all the best in your career and future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to say here's my contact information if you want to jot it down. If not, Stacy has it as well. Please feel free to reach out for any advice you think you might need. And thank you.
Perfect. Yes, thank you, Rosa. So I do have that presentation, and I'm happy to, Rosa, if you're okay with that, since it has some resource links for all of those that are in attendance today, I'm happy to forward that on to them if you are okay with that as well. Okay, perfect. And while we're just wrapping up, I'm sharing my screen for the post-grad survey. So for hopefully you can all see that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Hang on one second. I think you might be seeing more than, okay.
I just saw
I'm
a
on
survey, nothing else.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm on one screen today, folks. Sorry about that. So yes, so feel free, if you could just take less than 5 minutes if you are graduating, we would appreciate you scanning that QR code, completing your post-grad survey, even if your plans are up in the air, and you don't have something specific to report. There'll be some other questions on that, as well as to things that you've done during your college time at Penn State. So, but Rosa, thank you so much. We will forward on your presentation, since it has some of those resource links. We will forward that on to all of those in attendance today. And I didn't have any questions in the chat, but for those of you who are still hanging with us, if you would like, you can either put a question in the chat or Q&A, or you should have the capability to raise your hand, and I can allow you to pop into chat. So, but yes, questions are always great. Some of the things, just to kind of touch base on what Rosa was talking about. So always a funny story, when you're talking about, whatever you're dressed torso up, whatever you got bottom is fine. So we actually had one of our former students a few years ago. I mean, it was not funny then, it's funny now, but she was not dressed appropriately from the bottom down. Her doorbell rang as she was doing a virtual interview. She went to excuse herself and got up and did not have appropriate attire on the bottom. So I say all that to say, it's kind of like, dress for the part that you want, dress for the job that you want. And maybe that means dressing entirely torso and bottom.
Okay.
So Yep, yep, because you just never know, right? If you've got to get up. So
Yes.
and then for those of you who are at University Park campus, we may have some World Campus folks joining us, but for those of you who are at University Park, and actually some of the other campuses might have them as well. But our Bank of America Main Career Services Center has a professional attire closet available. So if you're needing, before you graduate, if you are needing some attire for interview purposes and things, I highly recommend if you just Google Penn State career professional attire closet, you'll see information come up. That's through the Office of Student Affairs, that career center, and you can be able to get some information about when you can visit that professional attire closet. So yeah, and Rosa, I loved your good tip about CCing the recruiter on the thank you email, because you're right, they are the cheerleader for you. And and Rosa was kind enough back in early February when the Career Enrichment Network did a virtual recruiting week. She was one of our recruiters that met with some students. And so it's also a great opportunity, those networking opportunities to really connect with somebody one-on-one basis. That's not your big career fairs, right? So this is a smaller scale. And then Rosa can be a cheerleader for those folks that she knows that she had gotten a chance to speak with. So just some really good tips, Rosa. Thank you very much for all that you shared. It doesn't look like we have any folks who have, I'm just going to check the chat one more time, and nothing in Q&A. So again, everyone, if you, I will also put in, this is in the chat, the bit.ly link for the post-grad survey. Again, please, seniors, before you graduate, take just a few minutes to do that, and you'll be put into a drawing for, we're giving away diploma frames and also pad folios for those ever important interviews that you may be still going on. So, okay. Thank you so much, everyone. And Rosa, really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay. Take care, everyone.